I watched Devil Wears Prada 2 on Blu-ray, and I have thoughts. Hi, how are you? So, I did not see Devil Wears Prada 2 in the theater. I waited to watch it until it came out on Blu-ray. And I have thoughts. I want to tell you about all kinds of interesting things I noticed between the first one and the second one and in the second one. And I want to talk about the story structure. And like most of my videos, this is going to be absolutely completely random. So I watched Devil Wears Prada 2 on Blu-ray, which is awesome because it's got some special features. I watched it 3 times. I watched it twice normal, and then the third time I watched it with the director commentary. And the director commentary has the director, the screenwriter, and I believe the costume designer. And they were all talking during the movie. And I took notes, and there's 15 pages of written notes, 16 pages, and I have lots of interesting things to share with you, and it's going to be completely random. And this will totally have spoilers. So if you have not seen Devil Wears Prada 2, you may want to watch it before watching this video. Okay. I loved the first movie. I really liked the second movie. I'm sure it will grow on me, but I probably love this too. The thing is, I know nothing about fashion, but I love movies set in offices in New York. I don't know what it is about it, but I love offices in New York and movies about them. And I love rom-coms, and the Devil Wears Prada movies are not rom-coms, but they have that upbeat rom-com feel, mood, and so that combination I just absolutely love. Movies set in New York and offices, Wall Street 2, Margin Call, rom-coms like You've Got Mail and 2 Weeks Notice. I just adore these movies. And so I just absolutely love these 2 movies, and they've got great characters and great dialogue, and they move at a very fast pace, and they're glamorous, and it's just what's not to like. The thing about these movies is I never really completely understood the stories in the sense of story structure. Story structure is you figure out what the problem is at the beginning of the story. Like Lord of the Rings, you got to take the ring and you got to go put the ring in the volcano. We knew this from the beginning, and then at the end of the series they do that. But in Star Wars is all about, okay, the stolen plans. It's all about the stolen plans. Okay, the plans are stolen. They're trying to get the plans at the beginning of the movie, and then by the end of the movie they use the plans to destroy the Death Star. Whereas in Devil Wears Prada, what are the stakes, really? Andy could quit the job at any time. I mean, nothing is keeping her there. She at one point says, well, if I can stick it out, I'm going to stick it out for a year and then I can work anywhere. Okay, so that's the goal. But they're not very high stakes. She could leave at any time. And in the second movie, if the magazine goes away, it's not the worst thing in the world. There are other fashion magazines. But it would be devastating to these characters that we love. And the movie moves at such a fast pace and it's so fun that you really don't mind if the story structure is not completely solid. I read a book called Good Scripts, Bad Scripts back in 1998 by Thomas Pope. And one of the first movies he talks about is The Abyss by James Cameron, and how it's not really a great story arc throughout the story. It's actually a bunch of series of stop and start stories throughout the thing, because they have to accomplish something and then they accomplish it, and then they move on to the next thing that they need to accomplish, and then they accomplish it, and then they move on to the next thing, rather than it being about a complete thing. Like when you have the movie Apollo 13, they gotta get back to Earth. That's the overall thing, okay? We know what the ultimate goal is. And then they have lots of mishaps along the way, lots of problems that they have to solve, little problems. And that's cool. But in Devil Wears Prada 2, what I noticed is, okay, the newspaper did something bad, and then they need to publish a written piece that apologizes, and so they can get good press again and everyone will like them again. And so they hire Andy to come in and write a great article that, apologizes and, brings the magazine back to its glory, or at least in good stead with everyone. And she does that. She publishes that article and people like it. There's a positive response. Apparently it wasn't enough, but problem solved, right? So what are we still watching the movie for? What's the goal? But it keeps unfolding like, peeling back a lemon. Okay, we did that, but there's actually something more to do. And so I don't entirely understand the story structure. That's why I was like, the first half of it, I was like, what are we doing? What is the ultimate goal? I'm not sure. I'm having a great time. These are great characters. We're in a great environment. This is really fun. And it's certainly great to hang out with all these characters again, but I'm not really sure what the story's doing. I don't know where we're going. And then the midpoint happens, and I'm going to do spoilers. So Irv Ravitz dies at the midpoint of the movie. And then the real villain steps in, and then we realize, she's got to keep the magazine going, and it won't be taken away, and so we have to figure out a way to keep the magazine going. But that really doesn't happen until the second, because the first half of the movie is Miranda going to get this big promotion, and then the second half of the movie is how's she going to keep the company. So throughout the movie, it kind of switches what the main goal is. So the plot is a little rocky, but I'm having such a good time, I don't really care. So I just wanted to point out that the story structure in these movies is not perfect, but they're so darn fun, it really doesn't matter. And so anyway, I'm going to talk, now that I've got that out of the way, what they did say in the director commentary is that Devil Wears Prada 2 is about, the theme is survival. Andy's trying to survive as a writer, but all her jobs keep taking away. Miranda is trying to keep runway. She's trying to survive at her job, and she's also trying to keep the magazine surviving as, it changes from a big magazine into a digital thing, because they don't make big magazines anymore. Magazines used to be huge. I remember going, at lunchtime in San Francisco, going to the magazine racks and seeing all the magazines, and they were awesome. And this was in the late 90s. But, magazines have shrunk. This is a Rolling Stone magazine from December 30th, 1999. It's their Millennium edition. Look how huge this magazine is. It takes two hands to hold it. This is huge. Rolling Stone is like so much smaller and thinner now. Granted, this is a commemorative issue, but this is huge. I mean, Life magazine used to be this big. This is huge. This is a monster. Look how big Life magazine used to be. And now these little tiny magazines, and they're so thin that, does anybody buy magazines anymore? And then, everything's going online. And so changes have been happening. And so by the end of the movie, I'll get to it in my notes, but she said the movie is about survival. And so when you have the last scene, you can see, I'm just going to skip to the end, and because what she said was really amazing. So the movie is about survival. This is what the screenwriter said. And these three people have found a little tiny nest in the woods for themselves that is going to work for now. Wow. So they found somebody to buy the company. They still get to keep runway. They still get to keep their jobs. And Miranda and her are now partners, and they're just surviving. We don't know what the future is going to be, but they're surviving for now. And they also said when they do the pullback at the end, fire engines go by. Anyway, I hate when fire engines go by. You always hope the fire engine keeps going and does not stop here. Whenever I was living in the city, you'd hear the fire engine go by and they're like, please don't stop here, please don't stop here. One time, I'm getting sidetracked, but one time I was in San Francisco and it was like 2:00 at night, and the fire truck did not go by. It stopped, and I looked out my window and someone had lit the garbage can on fire across the street. And the fire truck had to put it out. So that was the one time the fire truck did stop right in front of my apartment. And that is not a pleasant feeling when the fire truck does not keep going. So anyway, I got diverted. So the movie's about survival. And when you pull back from the building at the end of the movie and you see Miranda, Nigel, and Andy in their offices through the windows, she said, you pull back and there they are, on their piece of wood floating next to the Titanic. They survived. For now. Sorry, I sweat. And so, yes, okay, the theme is survival, but I didn't really realize that until, okay, I dab that, I'm gonna dab here. I didn't really realize that until the end of the movie, that the movie is about survival. And maybe you're not supposed to know that. Maybe it's a mystery, it's an unfolding thing, but I found the screenplay a bit confusing, even though I don't know how else you write it. I think it was pretty darn good, but But that was interesting that it was about survival. And yes, okay, now that I go back and watch the second and third time, I see the overall thing. Okay, it is about surviving. Surviving his writing, surviving his magazine, surviving all these changes that are happening. Even Peter, the boyfriend, or the new boyfriend, he's renovating old buildings and changing them into something new, and everything's ever changing. And then Emily's boyfriend in the movie, the guy who's taking over, or tried to take over, he's talking about AI replacing everything, and that's just the way it goes. And so we're in this flux of change, and which is a great theme to talk about in a movie. I just didn't entirely understand that until the end, and maybe you're not supposed to. Anyway, these are my notes. When you watch a sequel that is 20 years later, you think, oh my gosh, 20 years have gone by. What have I done with my life? Did I do anything in that time that was of significance? I hope so. But man, 20 years went by, and I was just so thrilled that they actually made a Devil Wears Prada 2. I didn't think they would. That's amazing. I remember last year, was it last year? Watching on Instagram, people in New York were filming the outside shots of Anne Hathaway and Meryl Streep and Emily Blunt and Stanley Tucci walking in the New York parks, walking in front of buildings, and filming them, and just watching the paparazzi, or the, not even paparazzi anymore, it's people just filming with their phones, watching the clips of them filming it. It was like so exciting. They're making a Devil Wears Prada 2. This is going to be awesome. And we're just so happy to see the characters again that, you know, they could sit in an office and just talk, and that would be fine. I just love them being all together. They're so awesome. And the first movie is so iconic that I can't even completely understand why. I don't know why it works completely. It's got great tropes of, you know, this it's kind of like Wall Street and Wall Street 2. You know, it's very similar movies of a person in their 20s trying to learn this industry in New York and trying to survive in it and excel in it. But they come against their moral questions, and they have to make decisions based on morals, and they get caught up in this, in the glitz and the glory. And so Devil Wears Prada and Wall Street are actually similar movies. If you think about it, it's just a different industry. Devil Wears Prada is a little more glamorous. So yeah, 20 years have gone by. Oh my gosh. What have we done during that time? So see, this is some of the interesting things that I wrote down while listening to the director commentary. Some of these are my thoughts, and some of these are things that were pointed out. At the 7-minute mark, Andy's walking through the park during the opening montage. Is that the 7-minute mark? No. Anyway, maybe it is. I'm sorry. So she's walking through the park, and a guy's holding up 2 belts and comparing them. That's a callback to the cerulean belts in the first one. Miranda's townhouse kind of looks like Thomas Crown Affair is one of my favorite movies set in New York. And her townhouse kind of reminds me of Thomas Crown's, and they do a downward shot of her townhouse, which totally looks like the downward shot of the Thomas Crown Affair townhouse. So I thought that was an interesting comparison. The director said it costs more now to get the same locations for the second movie as they did the first, and of course the actors cost more. The screenwriter says she likes to put fun words like trudge into Meryl Streep's lines because she knows Meryl will do something fun with those fun words. Anna Wintour was on the set when we first meet Emily Blunt's character in the movie. Anna Wintour, that was the day that Anna Wintour was on the set, and if you watch the gag reel on the Blu-ray, Anna Wintour's on the gag reel. Spoilers. The 4-person scene, they meet Emily and then they all go into a conference room. Originally, all 4 characters were not supposed to be there. Stanley Tucci was not going to be in that scene, and Emily Blunt insisted that he was in that scene. That's what I got I believe that's what they said. And it was great to see all 4 of them in the same room talking. The magazines have lost power, and the advertisers have gained power. So now the advertisers are more powerful than the magazines. So that's the switch that has happened over the past 20 years. Nigel explains that in the past they could spend a month in another country doing a photo shoot, and now they have to hurry up and they have 2 days in a very close location studio. And so they don't have the budget. Magazines just don't have the budgets that they used to. That's one of the things that has changed. Yeah, one of the things, if you're in your 20s right now and you're watching this, I'm over 40, and so the thing you notice is how much things change. When I go back to San Francisco, I see all the restaurants that are not there anymore, and the stores that are not there anymore. A lot of stuff is the same, and a lot of stuff has changed. And you say to someone, hey, Borders Books used to be there, and now it's a shoe store, and no one seems to care. And oh, that Apple store used to be a Levi's jeans store, and nobody cares. And it's amazing how things change. And if you're in your 20s, over the next 20 years, it's going to be amazing how things change, and you notice the changes. And then the next generation doesn't get it. You're explaining what happened, and they're like, Anyway, it's just something. The thing that I've found fascinating over the past 20 years is just that things change, and some people care, and some people just don't understand what it was and how it used to be. And anyway, that's what you get to look forward to if you're in your 20s, just change. It's amazing. Miranda tells Andy that she will fail. So maybe that's the motivation Andy has through... So in Act 1, Meryl Streep says, and you will fail. And maybe that's Andy's internal motivation, is to not fail. Maybe it's to impress Miranda. Maybe it's just to keep a job. Maybe it's just she doesn't want to fail. That's her character drive. And so this is me trying to understand the screenplay and what that motivation is for the characters to do what they do. The director said that the first movie was shot on film and this movie was shot on digital. The director pointed out that he does an identical quick dolly shot or dolly zoom into Miranda's office in the Devil Wears Prada 2, where Miranda is talking with Nigel in there, I believe, and that's a callback to the fast zoom into Miranda's office when Miranda says, Emily, we need to get everybody and leave now for the offices. And it's just interesting that so many callbacks, so many things that they did in the first movie that they did in the second one. For example, the last line of the first movie was Miranda saying, go. And she does that again. That's the last line of the second movie. She says to Andy, go. So there's these callbacks, these little things that rhyme, that happened from the first movie that happened in the second one. The actress who plays Miranda's assistant is doing great facial reactions. You can see her, she's not just standing there, she's actually reacting to what's happening on the thing. And she's great to watch for her opinion of what's happening, when Andy is saying just things that, you see her roll her eyes or things like that. She's great performance. The first shot of the scene, I guess, was in the gallery when Andy is trying to track down Lucy Liu, and she's talking to her friend who works in the gallery. I guess that was the first scene that was shot. And the last scene that was shot was Miranda in the huge gallery in Milan, Italy, when she's walking alone in that big gallery with that amazing outfit. And that was those are the first and the last shots for the movie. They pointed out in the director commentary that the movie's theme was things being torn down and rebuilt and old things being repurposed. And that's what was done with Peter's building. The value of things being remade and torn down. So that's one of the things. They pointed out that Lucy Liu's estate, where Lucy Liu was filming the estate, was actually Billy Joel's former estate. And at the beginning of the movie, when Miranda walks out of the limousine and walks onto a carpet, it's a blue cerulean carpet, and it's just a callback to the first movie. So you see so many blues, and this is what the director commented. They pointed out so many things. The theme of blue, so many blues. Maybe it's not blue, maybe it is cerulean. Throughout the movie, the blue is a color that's used a lot. The party scene when Andy goes to the Hamptons at Miranda's house, that was filmed a few doors down from Billy Joel's former estate at another estate in Oyster Bay. at Irv's birthday party, the Giggly Squad. If you ever listened to the Giggly Squad podcast, well, the two women who do the podcast were there as cameos at Irv's party, and there was a whole bunch of people. But they pointed out a whole bunch of people. It's like, oh, the Giggly Squad was there. And Andy talks about Nigel getting screwed over in the first movie right at the midpoint of the movie, right before Irv dies. And so just story structure wise, to discuss that right at the midpoint of the movie, and then that's addressed again at the very climax of the movie. Whatever happens at the midpoint of a movie, you have to address at the very climax, at the very end of the movie. That's the whole Joseph Campbell hero's journey thing, is the boon that you gain at the midpoint of the movie you use to solve the problem at the end of the movie. And so I thought that was good story structure. It took 56 days to shoot, and the only day that it rained was the memorial scene for Irv, so that worked out. The author of Devil Wears Prada, Lauren, I don't remember her last name. She had cameos in the first movie. She was the babysitter on the train, and she had a cameo in the second movie. She was after the memorial. Andy and Nigel are walking through the park, and Lauren has a cameo in that scene, as well as Radio Man. And I guess Radio Man is a guy who shows up at these movie sets all over New York and is in the background of over 300 movies. So both of those people were in that as cameos in that scene. At the 1 hour mark, right before Miranda goes down the elevator into the cafeteria, Miranda's assistant is wearing a black dress that at the time had recently been worn by Taylor Swift. It's what the costume designer said. A lot of crane shots were used in the first movie, but the editor took them out. And the editor said, we don't need a lot of crane shots because they take too much time and they slow down the pace. We need a lot more zoom shots. So the director was very conscious when making the second movie that he did less crane shots and more zoom shots. There's quite a bit of zoom shots in this movie. I learned something. There's a crash zoom. So you zoom in and you stop really quick. You zoom in fast and you stop really quick. That's called a crash zoom. So I learned a new terminology. Silence was an interesting thing that they used in this movie from time to time. They were talking about that, I believe, when Andy and Nigel are talking in the scene where he's looking at slides, and Andy found out that they're going to downsize the whole company, and which is reminiscent of the scene that she has with Nigel when he's looking at slides, when she's complaining in the first movie. It says, "Hey, Nigel, can you help me out about your outfits?" So it was a callback to that. Offices have glass walls, so you can see what's going on in all the other parts of the office. They did this a lot in the movie Disclosure with Michael Douglas and Demi Moore. The director wanted all the offices to be glass so you could see the entire set. Then it wasn't as claustrophobic. When after Irv dies, we see the actual villain, who's Irv's son, who's trying to take over the company and reduce everything and change everything. And when he becomes the real villain, this was my thoughts. Then we actually sort of side with Miranda. It's because the first part of the movie, Miranda's still the villain. And then we start sympathizing for her when the other villain, this new villain who's trying to take everything, Irv's son, is trying to take over. And then we have several villains by the end of the movie. And so the more villains that we have, the more we actually side with Miranda. And so our feelings sort of shift. I mean, I'm not completely sympathetic to Miranda. I mean, she certainly didn't talk very nice to Lady Gaga. And, but, I came to sort of understand that she's standing up for the best of human creation. And Emily's new boyfriend is standing up for progress and AI and everything, where humanity's going away and we're all going to be replaced. And Miranda's actually standing up for the best in human creation and visions and art. And so I got a little more sympathetic, but I still think Miranda is rude. Anyway, when Miranda gets on the airplane, the guy sitting next to her eating the sandwich was a crew member on the set. I guess it was the best boy. He they had him sit next to Miranda and eat the sandwich. When we find out that Emily is trying to betray Miranda, I guess, and then she leaves, and then Andy and Miranda talk for just a minute. I guess that scene actually went on for 2 more pages, but it was cut. So I really want to get the screenplay and be able to read what was cut, because I like doing that. In the first movie, the fashion brands were scared to be in the first movie and even talk about it because they didn't want to upset Anna Wintour. But in the second movie, all the brands wanted to be in the movie, and because now it was okay, and they could now. So they had a lot more. The movie makers had a lot more help or support from the fashion industry to make the second one. So then it became cool, and it became all right. The scene between Miranda and Nigel at the end, I got really emotional during that. I mean, they're great actors, Miranda and Meryl Streep and Stanley Tucci, and they've worked together before in the Julia Childs movie and the first Devil Wears Prada. And it was an amazing scene. Just, Nigel, if I'd taken you for granted, he was very bashful, and it was underplayed, and it was just beautiful. It was beautifully done. And okay, that's when I started getting emotional at the end of the movie, and the music and then at the end of the movie, when Miranda and Andy are in the car, and we're a team now, we're going to work together. It's reminiscent. It's a reprise, I guess is the word. It's the same because the first movie ended with them in a car in Paris, and now they're in a car working as a team in New York, and so it was interesting to see that. And in the first movie, she says, "Everyone wants to be us." In the second movie, she says, "You woke me up." So she's changed as a person, as a character, and I guess Miranda's music theme plays in both car scenes in the first movie and the second movie. They wanted to make this second movie so you didn't need to see the first movie. You could just see the second and understand everything. In the director commentary, they said one of the lessons was, no matter how far you advance in your career, you are never equal to your boss. This is something that you'll learn. They wanted to show the passage of time. So in the scene when Andy and Emily have lunch, in the restaurant at the end of the movie, they wanted to show the passage of time, so they changed Emily's hair color to blonde. And that scene, it's like, okay, I understand you want to wrap everything up and you want to have a happy ending, but I don't think those characters would become friends again. I mean, she showed her true colors. Emily tried to screw over Miranda. I don't think Andy, forgives and forgets. I certainly wouldn't. And so it's a great scene. I'm glad they're doing it, but it's just like, I guess Emily's learned her lesson, but I just don't understand why they would be friends again. I mean, she shows that she's not a nice person. Maybe she's changed now. I don't know. It's still a great scene. I love that they went back the eyebrows thing. I love that they talked about carbs like they did in the first movie. And it was just a lovely scene. And you see, it's a great restaurant. I totally want to go to that restaurant and sit in that spot because it's a great view of New York. And they said in the movie that they wanted to have a lot of windows in these offices and restaurants and stuff so you could see New York out and have New York be very much a part of the movie. And so what's interesting is that they shot these scenes in studios. And so the windows are actually blue screen in most of these, from what I understand, and they just digitally add the city outside later. And so I think in one of the making of documentaries that's included in the Blu-ray, they show the blue screen window, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, what? Where's New York? And so that's one of the interesting things. The second movie was made with care, is what I wrote down. It was sort of a celebration of the characters, a celebration of the first movie, certainly made 20 years later to celebrate the 20th anniversary. But, they didn't just throw this movie together as a cash grab, and I really appreciate that. And it's a really well done movie. I think the screenplay structure is still as rocky as the first one, but it got me emotionally, and it kept me interested in the pace and the. It was interesting enough, and it had enough of a story and twists and turns, actually more twists in this one, that I loved it. I did. I'm going to watch this over and over again. I've watched this 1,000 times. I'm probably going to watch this one 1,000 times too. I'm so glad that they got the same director and a lot of the same crew back together again, and certainly the same actors and new actors. And they really, I'm sure that they had 20 years to think about how to do a second one, so that's plenty of time. And so I'm just glad. I really felt that they put a lot of care into this movie, and there's so many things about it that I love. The last scene of the movie, when Andy is walking through the office, she is wearing the cerulean lumpy blue sweater, except now it's a vest because she cut off the sleeves. Because apparently the costume designer was saying that they wanted to have the lumpy blue cerulean sweater again in the movie, but they wanted it to be different. And I guess it was Anne Hathaway who picked up a pair of scissors and just cut off the sleeves. And apparently I don't know if that's how it went down, but that's the gist of what I heard. And the costume designer says, I have video of this happening. And I really would love for her to release that. I really want to see that scene. I don't know why. Just because it's an iconic. I mean, that's right. That cerulean blue sweater is right up there with Dorothy's red ruby slippers. I mean, it's just an iconic piece of clothing from a movie. And that they cut. What they do with the sleeves? Are they in the Smithsonian? That lumpy blue sweater should be in the Smithsonian. And so I didn't catch it on the first two watches, and it wasn't until the costume designer pointed it out at the end of the movie on the director commentary that I noticed she's wearing the cerulean sweater, but it's now a vest. That was crazy. Anyway, it's just, if you're a fan of these movies, it's like, oh my gosh, there it is. But it's completely different. Oh, that's fascinating. There's a flashback in the first movie. I don't remember what it was, but there's at the very end of the first movie, there's a flashback to Andy how she was in the beginning of the movie, organizing all her writing stories. And then there's a flashback at the end of the second movie, as they pointed out, when they flash back to Irv and his son in the car, when Nigel is explaining, I'm the one who got you this job. You thought this just fell on your lap? No, I organized this whole thing. And I guess that was a note from someone else on the crew, maybe the producer or something like that, who gave it to the screenwriter, and the screenwriter used that note and put it in there. Because that's great. I love tidbits like that, where you learn at the end, oh, this didn't happen by accident. This was all orchestrated. I love that. This movie's about survival, so I already pointed that out to you. That they're, at the end of the movie, they pull back from the building, and the screenwriter says, there they are, the three of them holding on to pieces of wood floating next to the Titanic, so they survived. And I thought that was a really cool way to put it. Then the director says, something about this pullback from the building suggests that there should be another movie. So maybe they'll do a Devil Wears Prada 3. I don't know. I don't know what they do. Like I said, the last line of both movies is Miranda saying, go, and then smiling. She smiles at the second movie, and the first movie, and then she laughs at what Andy had written in the second movie. They said a lot of people from the first movie came back to work on the second movie. They said that one of the reasons Miranda was mean in the first movie is that she didn't have time for niceties. It was always business first. And now, which doesn't excuse her rudeness, I think, in the first movie. It's totally unnecessary for her to say half the stuff she said. And said now in the second movie, now Miranda is trying to navigate in this world where she is not as primacy, and is not as powerful as she once was. And that was the interesting twist of the second movie, is to see how much Miranda is struggling or dealing with the fact that she's not as powerful as she once was, and is, beholden to the advertisers. Things change, man. Things change. So, those are my notes. On Devil Wears Prada 2, those are all of my thoughts. I don't know how long this video is. I really loved the first movie. I really loved the second movie. And I hope you enjoy it too. And having it on Blu-ray, you get to watch all these, you get to listen to the director commentary, you get to watch the gag reel, you get to watch, they have like, I think 3 or 4 behind the scenes documentaries about, bringing the cast back, and another movie about shooting in Milan, and another documentary about, there's only like 5-minute documentaries, but, and another one about the fashion. And they're all really fascinating and well done. And I'm just so glad that they made a second one. And if you're watching this video, you probably are too. I'm just such a fan. This is iconic, and it's one of the best movies made in the past 20 years. As far as just like enjoyability and iconic status and amazing characters and really just wonderful. We can't wait to see another Devil Wears Prada movie. And at least I can't. So anyway, I do hope they make a third one. That'd be great. And I hope they put as much care into that one as they did this one. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Devil Wears Prada 2. And I would love to know your thoughts. So you can leave them in the comments. And, if any of the cast or crew is watching this, this is great. Thank you for making this. As a fan, we all really appreciate this. And we're going to hold this in our hearts and really enjoy watching it over and over and over and over and over. I can't believe they got the sleeves off the cerulean sweater. Anyway, have a great day, and I'll see you next week. We'll talk about something. All right, bye.